What up, what up, what up, what up? It's me, L Teddy 27.
What's good tonight? Right about the hood.
Oh, dear God, I'm already eating a drink. Look a damn mess, just a damn mess. No means no, and yes means no. What up, what up, what up, what up, what up? What's good, people? What's up? It's me, L Teddy 27. I'm back, and I'm back for another review. This is going to be our review for Lovecraft Country, Season 1, Episode 3. And I know I'm late. It's titled Holy Ghost. Nah, I know I'm late. Real late with this review, but it's been a long week, lots to unpack, so let's get right down to it. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Now we start off in church. Now so we have this church service. People are in there, they catching the Spirit, the Holy Ghost, and so forth. And I definitely want y'all to make note of this, because when we talk about Christianity in the black church, I think what happened was when white people brought black people to America and taught black people Christianity, they expected us to practice it the same way that they do, not knowing that black people coming from Africa, we still were rooted and grounded in our native religions back in Africa, our native culture back in Africa. So the black church, Christianity amongst black people, involves the music, the percussive rhythms of gospel music, the even, dare I say, being possessed by the Holy Ghost. And that same type of possession that happens in some of the more native and aboriginal the religions back in Africa. And so you would have these this more spiritual attachment to religion and Christianity that comes with being black people out of Africa. And that is the part of our African culture and religion that translated into the Christianity that was forced upon us. So when you look at the black church and you see, people, seeming to be possessed by the Holy Ghost or the Holy Spirit or whatever you want to call it, people seeming to, shout and be, entranced and possessed, that is what all of that is about. And we see that here at the beginning. But Letty is sitting in the middle of this church, and people will often tell you, you will go to a black church, and when the Spirit is in the room, you almost feel like you become, possessed yourself, or you almost feel like you can't even control the feelings that you have, like you have to move. Letty ain't feeling none of that. Letty's sitting there like a ghost, like, okay, what's going around? She got tears coming out of her eyes. Meanwhile, in the background is this spoken word that's being spoken. Now, if you don't recognize this spoken word, those familiar with Leomi Maldonado, if you don't know who Leomi is, I should be able to just say her first name, and you know who Leomi is. But Leomi is a part of the ballroom scene. She's a trans woman, and Leomi is legendary, iconic, known across the world for her voguing skills. And so she was on America's Best Dance Crew and all of that stuff. Anyway, Nike did a commercial featuring her, and in the as a backdrop of that commercial, you hear this spoken word being spoken by another member of the ball community named Precious Angel Martinez. And so I thought it was, when I heard it, and it was brought to my attention by someone. It made me go, oh, there's a nod to the ballroom scene, to the gays, to the spectrum, and so forth, while we're in the black church. And here we have this antithesis going on here. You understand what I'm saying? The black church vehemently despises all things spectrum and LGBTQIA. I just heard that, saw that, and I immediately, it made me go, ooh, I like this contrast. So you got all of that going on. We're going to focus on that a little bit later. I'm telling you now, we're going to be in for a good ride on this review. It's going to take us a minute to get through this review, y'all. So then you see they put on the screen goes black, and they tell us about in 1955 how these black men and women moved into this house on the north side of Chicago, and 10 days after that, 3 people were found missing, inside of the house and were never seen again. After that, we immediately see day one. Day one, we see Letty walking with her sister Ruby. They're walking somewhere, and they walk up to this big 3-story house. Letty says that she bought this house, and Ruby is like, wait a minute, how your broke ass got money to buy this house? Where'd you get money from? And, Letty's like, I know you let me borrow money for this, you let me borrow money for that, and, I'm just trying to pay you back. And what I'd like to do is I like to open a boarding house to help, black people, black men and women have somewhere to stay if they need somewhere to stay, this, that, and the third. So I want to have a boarding house. And so they started going in the house, and it looks all, disheveled and decrepit and dilapidated and so forth. And so she said, "Oh, let me show you the elevator. Let me show you the elevator." Elevator almost takes the lady out. You hear me? The elevator. At first she thought the elevator wasn't working. Next thing you know, elevator comes down, almost killed Letty. And Letty was like, "Yeah, we're gonna get that fixed." So reluctantly, Ruby says, "Okay, I'll move in, but I'm getting the biggest room." So then we're at Uncle George's house. Hippolyta, George's wife, she's in the room, and she is still not over the death of George. She's in her feelings. She's in a funk. She ain't feeling it, honey. So then we see her take out George's favorite book, which is Dracula. And she starts ripping the pages out of Dracula, just ripping the pages out of it. And that's her way to cope. I guess that's her coping mechanism as of late. And we know that that's George's favorite book. And so she's ripping these pages out. And then, we see in the kitchen, we got Tick there, and we got the daughter, Dee. And so she comes in the room, and Tick cooked breakfast and, made sure everything was good for her. Tick is trying to be a good nephew and take care of his aunt after the death of his uncle. And so Tick told her all about, at first there was this awkwardness because it was like she was trying to get some off the stove and Tick was trying to help her, and Tick was really just trying to help her, and she ain't feeling it. She's like, "Okay, you just in a way." She was like, "Okay, just go. And you could tell there was this uneasiness. You could tell Tick felt it as well. So Tick tells her, "Listen, the publisher's been trying to get in contact with you about the travel guide and wanted to know when you was going to send him the final edit so you could publish it out." And she was like, "Oh, I'll go ahead and get to that now." He was like, "Don't worry about it. I already sent it to them." And she was like, "I didn't even get to proof it." He was like, "Nah, it looked good. I sent it to them. Everything is fine." And so then the daughter Dee starts to talk to Tick and said, "Oh, maybe we can go out and do some stuff this evening." And Tick kind of already read the room and was like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna be here tonight." And so she was like, "Wait, you've been here for weeks?" And he was like, "Yeah, I got some things to do." And you saw Hippolyta was like, "Go ahead on." And so there's that uneasy. He can tell he's overstayed his welcome. Then we see Tick goes over his dad's house. He goes over Montrose's house. Montrose is knocked out asleep. Tick goes get some water out the sink and throws it on his face and says, "Gotcha, kid." Now, if you go back to episode 1, Tick had that dream with the aliens, and this guy Jackie Robinson came and, busted up the aliens with the bat and said the same thing, "Gotcha, kid." And so we learned that comes from a story that George told about when Montrose and George, I believe, were in the war. And somebody came and saved the day, swinging a bat, kind of like Jackie Robinson, and to save them from dying. And he said, "Gotcha, kid." And so that's where that comes from. So anyway, they start going back. They sit at the table. He said, "Listen, I need somewhere to stay. I feel like I overstayed my welcome at Uncle at Hippolyta's house. I need somewhere to stay." And so they're talking about that. Then he says, "Well, when are we going to tell her the truth?" And so Montrose is like, "We ain't tell her nothing. We told her what she needs to know. The sheriff shot him. We showed her the bullet wound. We had the funeral. It is over. Let sleeping dogs lie, okay? Let the dead be buried with the dead. It's the dead." He was like, "It ain't gonna do us no good. It's nothing we can do about it. It ain't gonna help nothing for us to tell her what happened, for real. So we just gonna leave it at that." So he keeps going on and on and on. Tick keeps going on and on and on about how Uncle George would want us to tell the truth. Uncle George this, Uncle George that, Uncle George this, Uncle George that. And finally, Montrose gets so angry, he slams his fist on the table, and he's just violently angry at that point. And so Tick, I guess, probably had a flashback and was like, "Yeah, I ain't dealing with you like this no more. You ain't gonna be beating on me again." And gets up, grabs his stuff, and hightails it out of there. Then we go on to day 2. So day 2, we see people moving into the house. Letty done got some boarders and some people to move into this house. Her and Ruby are there, and they done they done started letting people move in. One of the people moved in had this dog, and she was like, "What's your dog's name?" And he says Baldwin. And then I think she asked him his name, and he says, "My name is James." Now, I don't believe that was supposed to be James Baldwin. I think they were giving a nod to James Baldwin, just giving you attachment to the time period. If you recall, James Baldwin wrote Go Tell It on the Mountain in 53, I believe, and this is supposed to be the summer of 55. And Go Tell It on the Mountain was huge at that time. It was a bestseller. It was huge at that time, especially amongst Black people. So James Baldwin was a very famous individual at that time. Anyway, Tick comes in and he needs a place to stay, and she says, I got an extra room, I'll let you stay in my room. He even tells us he ain't been back. He was supposed to be back to work a couple of days after they got back, and he ain't been back to work in a month. So then we see some white boys from the neighborhood. They done park their cars in front of the house, and what they done did was it sounds like, I immediately at first thought, is that the car alarm going off? Because you hear the horn blaring. It ain't the car alarm. I had to remember the timing of this predates car alarms. What done happened is they done took bricks and tied bricks to the steering wheel to depress the horn so that the horn could just blare, all the time, over and over and over. Now, my analytical side said, but wouldn't that kill the battery? Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But the horn was blaring. Anyway, they wanted to make sure they knew, hey, boo, you ain't welcome yet. And if that ain't if that ain't let them know they weren't welcome now, when we see the next day, or as we see on day 5, the white people started putting up signs in their lawn saying, we are a white community. Undesirables go away. I was like, oh, undesirables must go. I was like, oh. So anyway, Letty is sleeping in the bed. And while she's sleeping in bed, her sheet gets ripped off of her. She pulls the sheet back on, and creeping up on the side of the bed is the ghost of this black lady who looks like her whole mouth cavity has been blown off or something like that, or ripped off or something like that. And so, then she's woken up. She doesn't see the ghost because she's asleep. She just pulls the sheets back on, and she's woken up by the blaring of these horns still. And so then Letty goes, here's, that she said there's an issue with the boiler. So she goes downstairs to fix the boiler. And while she's down there, there's this room underneath the basement where the boiler is. And she starts hearing banging and what she thinks is voices down there. And so she gets afraid. So she goes upstairs and gets Tick. Tick comes downstairs with his bat. Child, Tick had on this tank top. Tick was sweating and had sweat dripping all down his body, glistening on every fiber of muscle on those arms of his and on those pecs of his and all. Ooh, Jesus. Do Jesus and do him well. Anyway, he goes down there, but there's nothing down there. He was like, I don't see anything. She was like, I know I heard something. I know what I heard. And so Tick basically tells her, for all we know, it could be the white boys doing this. I don't know, but we're going to figure out what it is and who it is, but it could be the white boy. But he does tell her, listen, I think that you should turn this into your dark room, because this is a great place. No sunlight, no nothing down here for a dark room, and you can develop your pictures down there. Then we fast forward to day 8. Letty and everybody is having a big housewarming party that night. And there's people all over the house talking. And so you see a group of people talking about saying, oh, well, I think they're going to pick their civil rights leader, some guy by the name of Michael. That's what the guy says. And so the lady said, nah, he goes by Martin now. Now, conveniently, they are talking about Martin Luther King. They reference that Martin Luther King's name was originally Michael. His father's name was Michael as well. But early on in Martin, when Martin was a little boy, not when he was grown by that time, but when he was a boy, his name was changed to Martin when his dad read up on Martin Luther and learned what Martin Luther did over in Europe and all that he was able to accomplish. And he was so inspired by the story of Martin Luther that he changed his name to Martin Luther, and he's changed his son's name to Martin Luther. And that's how Michael became Martin Luther King. And so that's the story of, so his name was Michael originally, as well as, remember, this is the summer of 1955. What happened in 1955? The Montgomery boycotts. And if you remember, that's when Martin Luther King had one of my favorite speeches of his, but a famous speech of his says, that's called There Comes a Time. And that's the speech where he says, there comes a time when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And he talks about, there comes a time where you get sick and tired of being trampled by the iron fist, by the iron foot of oppression and all of that stuff. Great speech. Anyway, so I thought that was a great reference there to let you know what time period we're dealing with, to let you know everything that was going on. Now, Letty says, the black lady also says that to the other man that they made Martin marry a black woman, alluding to maybe that he was going to marry a white woman. And it is well known that Martin's dad did say, you're going to marry Coretta. Now, And Letty says, just because you love a white woman don't mean that you can't fight for us or fight for the cause or fight for black people. And I mean, that was Letty, giving a nod to the fact that she's biracial herself. Anyway, moving on. One of the tenants tells Letty, I remember her walking around, that the elevator is broken. There always seems to be a situation with that elevator. And I already told y'all that elevator is dangerous. Anyway, Aunt Hippolyta is there at the party, and her and Letty are in the kitchen. She starts to tell Letty all about how, she's kind of tired of Tick being at the house. And probably because Tick brings up so many, Tick loves his uncle, and Tick often talks about his uncle. So I can imagine Tick is probably around the house talking about George all the time, and that's not helping Hippolyta in her grieving process. And Hippolyta is, finding fault in all of the little things that Tick is doing, all of the things that Tick does to help around. She has a problem with it, and that's just because she's tired. She's complaining about things that he's doing that is helping her, and she's just, she's sick and tired of him being there. He's overstayed his welcome. Anyway, she asks, "Where's D?" And so we see D upstairs with her friends. They're playing on the Ouija board, and there are 4 of them. D, another girl, a boy. I can't remember the boy's name, but then there was another boy named Bobo. Bobo goes first. Bobo asks, "Am I going to have fun? Am I going to have a good time when I go on my trip?" Who's Bobo? I'm glad you asked. Bobo is the nickname of Emmett Till, who is from Chicago, who does go on a trip during that fateful summer down to, I believe, Mississippi, where we know the story. He dies. So the Ouija board told him, "Yeah, you're not going to have a good time." And so that was, once again, referencing the period of time that we're dealing with. And so that, I thought that kind of got me. It was very telling. The other guy, the other boy went next, and he asked, "Who are we talking to?" And the Ouija board spelled out George. And then the Ouija board spelled out, "George is dead." And that immediately upsets D, and she gets upset at everybody, and she walks out. Hippolyta is there looking for D, and she goes upstairs, and she thinks she hears a voice in a room. The door cracks open. She goes in the room, and there's this contraption there. Now, I'll be very honest. I didn't understand what that contraption was. I didn't know if it was supposed to be something representing the solar system. I didn't know what it was supposed to be. Somebody in the comments will tell me, because y'all are really good about that. But I couldn't make the connection with that contraption or thing that Hippolyta was so enamored with and looking at. Somebody, if you know, please tell me. Anyway, down at the party, Ruby is singing, and y'all know Ruby can sing. Ruby is singing, "Is You Is or Is You Ain't My Baby." Now, for people like me, I referenced that song from my favorite episode of Tom and Jerry, when Tom is singing to the little, Tom had his little girlfriend, the little white cat, and he was singing with the little guitar, "Is you is or is you ain't my baby." That's my favorite episode of Tom and Jerry. Don't judge me. Anyway, she's singing that. I had to reference that because I love Tom and Jerry. And then everybody's dancing. Letty is dancing all up on some man, okay? Tick comes in. He got his uniform on because he's been standing post outside the house to let the people know that a soldier, a veteran, lives here. And so Tick comes in. One of the people he went to school with says, "Hey, what you think about Letty? I used to wrestle with her back in high school." And Tick gave him this evil death stare, like, "Bitch, I know you lying." And he was like, "Oh, I did hear you is staying here rent free. All right, I ain't gonna move in on your territory. But if that is your woman, you need to let her know." And we look, and she over there grinding all up on some dude. Child, next thing we know, she in the bathroom, wiping her face or using the bathroom, whatever she was doing. In the mirror, she doesn't see it because she's washing her face. We see another monster, another spirit, another ghost. And then she doesn't see it because she's washing her face. And then she looks up, Tick is at the door. Baby Tick comes in that door, closes it, and baby Tick serves her some meat on a platter right on top of that damn sick baby. Tick unzipped, pulled down those pants, meat served on a platter. Gave her the business. Dug her out right there. Whew, child, even his ass cheeks is cute. Anyway, after they're done, Tick reaches down and touches himself. So she wrote it off as, "Oh, I didn't know I was on my period." She wrote it off as that being her cycle. We later find out that's her hymen. That was her first time having sex. And he was like, no, it's okay, ain't no problem. Ain't no problem. She was kind of, he was like, all right, I'll give you a little bit of time. I'll meet you out there in a sec. And when he leaves, she kind of starts weeping and crying because she just had her virginity broken, which I'm sure is a, experience, sometimes traumatic. Ruby, the party's still going on. Ruby goes to the door because she thinks she sees something through the window, and there's a cross burning on the front lawn. So they say, oh, go get the kids, go get the kids. Letty gets incensed, grabs the bat, goes outside, and what starts to play? Take It Back by Dorinda Clark Cole. If you don't know Take It Back by Dorinda Clark Cole, go look it up. Great song. I'm not a big fan of Dorinda Clark Cole's voice, but this is one of her better songs. Take It Back. Anyway, so, it's talking about everything the devil stole from me. I'm going to take it back. And so she goes out there and just starts wailing on all of the white boy cars that is in the front lawn with the horns blaring. And she busts up the windshields and the windows and the headlights. And then she, knocks the bricks off the steering wheel so the horns aren't still blaring. Anyway, what the part that got to me and what was so sobering was immediately they knew exactly what to do because some of them had shotguns in their hands. The guys that were outside on the front lawn on post had shotguns in their hands. Ruby, they went right into action. This was so sobering to me. Ruby immediately went and got her car. They opened the trunk. They put the shotguns and the bat into the car, and she drives off before the police gets there. Police get there. They immediately all get down on their knees, put their hands in the air, immediately assume the position because they knew exactly what was about to go down. Letty is in the squad car by herself with the police captain. Police captain goes on and on and on about how this is the Winthrop house. How did you get money to buy the Winthrop house? Do you know what happened there? Do you know we found 8 black people, the body parts of 8 black people down in the room underneath the basement, this, that, and the third. And, she says, well, I've been making, she says, there's been complaints made on you. And she says, I put 21 complaints in and y'all ain't did nothing. He was like, we ain't heard about no complaints. And so they start driving erratic, which causes her to, be tossed to and fro in the back of the squad car. And she kind of gets busted up a little bit. And so forth. But he gives her information that he doesn't know. A lot of times white people back in the day, just assumed that black people weren't intelligent enough to figure things out or to grab onto the little nuggets that they would give us, giving us information that we could use against them. So he tells her, he said, listen, we found those 8 bodies, and just like we found those 8, the body parts of those 8 people, I don't foresee you being in the house too much longer. So you stay if you want to, but I don't see you being there much longer. Then we fast forward to day 9. Letty is back home. She's in the room beneath the basement because she has turned it into her dark room, like Tick said, and she's developing pictures. She starts to look at the pictures and she sees scratches on them, and she notices these scratches are in strategic places. So she starts to place them on the ground to see if she notices something. And when she puts them all together, this image or this spirit rises out of the pictures, and this big head comes up and says, "Get out my house." And it scares her and knocks her into the stairs. She runs upstairs and so forth. And she's going upstairs to look at the other pictures to see if she sees more scratches and stuff in the other pictures around the house. And then Ruby said, listen, we got a problem here. It's people moving out of this house. It's people saying they don't want to stay here because you done made these white people think we're more of a target since you done busted up their cars and so forth. And she was like, listen, we still got bills to pay, but we still owe on this, whatever the little installment contract or whatever they had. We still own that. We need this money. She was like, Letty's like, listen, let them go. It's probably better for them. They'd probably be safer that way. Ruby then says, but what we gonna do? Letty says, well, I still got some of the money that Mama left me. Ruby looks at her like, Mama left you? Mama ain't had no money. Child. Ruby goes into this long story about how she got a call from a lawyer saying her mama left her an inheritance. Baby, Ruby, that's what Letty said to Ruby. Ruby goes off. And I don't blame her. She like, I know you the fuck lying. You ain't even come to the funeral. You ain't even paid me back all of this money me and your brother done gave you. You ain't even paid us back. You've been lying to us the whole time. You got this money. And you ain't even tried to pay us back. And you've been over here being selfish. She said, I just thought the whole time you was just a fuck up. But now I realize that you just fucked up. And I was like, oh, boom. She was kind of being selfish, and then Letty was being selfish and all this. She was like, I thought you was bringing me over here to really be a sister to me and this, that, and the third. You still lying to me and keeping all this stuff from me and all of it. I was with Ruby. Ruby went off. So then it fast forwards to day 10. Anyway, it starts off with Montrose going to see Hippolyta. Hippolyta is bringing groceries home, and he picks up. He says, "Let me help you with that." He drops one of the bags, and out pops a copy of, Dracula. And he was like, "Oh, that's George's favorite book." And she was like, "Yeah, I spilled coffee on his copy." Just a liar. So they go back and forth about how she said, "I know Tick been lying to me. Tick been staying with me for about a month, and he been lying to me every day about what happened to my husband. I know y'all showed me the bullet hole. I know y'all told me what happened to him, what y'all did to the sheriff, but I just feel like he lying, and I feel like y'all not giving me the whole story." And basically, she knows that she don't have the whole story. Montrose tells her, we told you what happened. Now you can take it or leave it. That is what it is. We then see Letty at some diner or restaurant. She's in the back of the diner. She's got all these pictures and articles trying to piece stuff together. Tick comes. So she ends up telling Tick the story of how she told Tick everything that the captain told her, how she started to put this stuff together, and how she figured out that the Winthrop house was last owned by this doctor, this scientist named Dr. Hiram Epstein. Dr. Hiram Epstein was doing these experiments that were deemed unethical because he was doing experiments on people. So the guy that's now the police captain was once a detective, and the detective would go and get black people, kidnap or get black people, or pick up black people as an officer, as a police officer. He would pick up black people from the South Side, bring them over to Dr. Epstein, and Dr. Epstein would then do these experiments on them and cause horrible things to happen to them. And so magically, the cases would never be found out because the cop that's the captain now, at the time he was lead detective on it, and it would always just, get brushed away. So nothing was ever heard of those black people. So that's what happened to those 8 black people. That's why that cop knew so much about the 8 black people that was in the bottom of that, underneath the basement. So she tells him all about this information she found. And then she talks about the fact that the spirit of those black people are trapped in that house with the scientists that killed them. Now, at that point, Letty tells Tick how she died too. And she's felt like a ghost since she got back, and she just hasn't been the same. And then I remembered she did die when they were in Artem, and they brought her back to life. So in my mind, I was like, is she a ghost? And that's why these ghosts are communicating with her? Like, that kind of is where my head went. Y'all let me know what y'all think about that. So then Letty tells Tick about how, it wasn't that her period was on. It was the fact that she, he popped her cherry. And that's why, there was blood. And, he kind of feels bad. She was like, nah, I needed to feel something. I bet you did. I need to feel something too. From Tick. Anyway, Letty brings this. Then we see Letty brings Letty and Tick brings this priestess or voodoo priestess or enchantress to the house. She got this gold. She does this sacrifice on the porch, takes the blood, puts the blood on their head, puts the blood on the door, and then they go inside and they go down to that room beneath the basement. And they start holding hands, and she starts doing this chant and doing this spell, and starts chanting. Meanwhile, the white boys saw this, and the white boys, while they're downstairs, breaks into the house. And so those 3 white boys that's been bothering them the whole time. So the spell is going on and on. They start chanting and chanting and chanting. The spirits start being conjured up, and the black people spirit are conjured up, and they end up being the reason why the white boys died. 2 of the white boys died because the radiator got blast, burned them to death, and then the other white boy, he got killed by he got decapitated by that elevator that I told you been acting up the whole time. Now, Letty, at first, the spirit of the doctor came into the enchantress, and the enchantress, grabs Tick by the throat and starts choking Tick, and then the spirit goes into Tick, and Tick starts walking and just starts getting possessed and saying, "Get out of my house, get out of my house." And then Letty, if I'm not mistaken, I think I remember Letty calling all of the names. Remember, she said she found out who all of the black people was. She put their faces together. She knew who they was. She had, researched and found out who they was. So I thought I remember her calling each of their names, but I could be wrong. I thought I remember her calling their names. And then she said, help me, you're not dead yet, you're not dead yet. Just saying that to them, she was saying that to herself, that she's not dead yet either. So all while this is going on, you start to see the spirits of these black people come up, and you see that they're dismembered and disshapen and misshapen, and all of the horrible things that happened to them while the doctor was doing these experiments. They start rising up, and you hear Shirley Caesar, Satan, we're going to tear your kingdom down at that point. And the more they start chanting with, they start doing the chanting with that the priestess was doing. First, Letty starts doing it, and then they start doing it with her. And the more they start chanting, the more they become whole again, and they begin to be healed. And it's a nod to, if you really want to, you can go and study some of the ceremonies that they do in Africa and so forth. So this is a nod to that. And I thought it was so telling, because what ends up happening is they end up exorcising the spirit of the scientist, Dr. Epstein, out of the house. And she says to him, get out of my house, just like he told her to get out of his house. So, and then by that time, you see the black people are, back whole again to their regular selves. And it's over. But I thought it was such a great parallel. They started the beginning of the episode with, in the black church, with this lady just, being consumed by the Holy Ghost and, catching the spirit. And then you have this exorcism where this almost does direct parallel. Same thing, being possessed, same thing, but in a different manner. And if you notice that priestess was, if you go back and study, she's giving a nod to some of these ceremonies that are done in Native African religions and cultures. And so there's this direct, stark parallel. The other thing that I wanted to note is that when you talk about horror, and you talk about the fact that ghosts are often seen as these evil spirits, we never get into why they are there. I'm not going to say never, but we rarely get into the whys, how they became spirits. They're just always seen as these bad things and horrible things. And that's because original horror stories were written by white people, and the ghosts were supposed to be metaphorically or allegorically black people that were supposed to be killed. The monsters, the ghosts, were supposed to be killed by this white knight white person always comes and saves the day. But this whole episode went a long way to dispel that. These weren't horrible people. These were victims themselves, who were victims of this white horrible person. The white person wasn't the savior this time. He was the demon this time. The white person this time was the person who caused them to be trapped there, had done all of these horrific things and caused all of this horrible stuff to happen. So I love the fact that they are picking apart what we know to be traditional horror, the genre of horror, and laying it on top of itself. Great writing. I just love, I believe the creator is Misha Green, and all that they're doing with this. I love what they're able to do with this. So then at the very end, we have, I think they're downtown Chicago, and they go to this real estate office owned by Jerome J. Jackson, and Christina Braithwaite drives up in her Bentley, and she tells him the money transfer don't went through. She done basically bought out his business, and he leaves. And Tick comes in, pulls a gun out on her, and tries to shoot her. And I was like, "What are you doing, Tick? You know she does spells. You know that ain't gonna work on her." And of course, he can't pull the trigger because she, turned around and put a spell on him. Anyway, she starts to tell him all about, well, not all about, but a little bit of the history. He was like, "I know." Well, he told her, he said, "I know you, the one who sent that money to Letty," meaning that Letty's mama didn't have no money. This all came from the Braithwaites. And Braithwaites or whatever. And so Braithwaites, whatever their name is, I don't care. And so the Winthrop house, because remember when they were in the when Letty was in the squad car, the man said, "Who gave you the money to buy the Winthrop house?" And so Winthrop is the name of the person who was one of the original founding members of the order that was started by Titus Braithwaite. And Titus Braithwaite apparently had figured out the language of Adam, and the Winthrop guy was upset about that. He wanted to be able to have that information too. So he studied and deciphered it, and I guess he died or whatever. But his writings of how to decipher the language of Adam was left in his house, and that was the Winthrop house. And so this whole thing was started by Christina Braithwaite and her dad to try to get to Tick, but to also try to get to those writings in the Winthrop house, because they believe that Winthrop's research and writings on how to decipher the language of Adam is in that house, is buried in that house. So that's what she's getting at. And so he was like, "Listen, I ain't here for all this history lesson." She was like, "Well, when you get ready to learn about your family legacy, here's my card. Give me a call, And so there she says to him, I thought you were smarter than that. And it goes off with her saying, you know, you can't go around killing white women. And it goes off from there. And I was like, wow. I left the episode spent. It was so perfectly timed, the episode, so beautifully written. It was so much there and so many great things that were in this episode. If you haven't watched it, go back and watch. It was so good. I'm tired even just getting through this review. But that was Lovecraft Country. It has taken everything out of it, and I'm so glad I got through this. Y'all let me know what y'all think. Let's get down in the comment section and good about what we saw. Until next time, that's all I got for y'all. Thank y'all for coming.